Should you make the transition into remote high ticket closing in 2026? It's a great question. And a lot of in person sales reps and 9 to 5 employees are wondering this right now because of what they're seeing online. The high ticket sales industry is growing rapidly, and you see closers making 100K, 200K, 300K a year, being able to travel, work from wherever they want, have a lot more time, freedom, and things like that. And you may be thinking to yourself recently, hey, should I make the transition into remote high ticket sales? Well, in this video, what I'm going to give you is the raw truth about whether or not you should make the jump. And if you are, the type of person that will succeed most likely inside the high ticket sales industry. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Brendan Whiting. And for the past 4 years, I worked for one of the most well-known high ticket coaching companies in the industry. I made $1.5 million in my first 3 years as a high ticket closer. That's take home commissions. And now I build sales teams and train in-person sales reps to get into remote high-ticket closing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. So the reason that I'm making this video is simple, because I'm sure you've been exposed to the same thing that I'm seeing online right now, where people tend to paint high-ticket sales as if it's some sort of cakewalk, right? The 4-hour work week, work from the beach, take a couple sales calls, make $10,000 a month, drink some margaritas, and that's it. And I'm here to tell you that that is BS, okay? There's no such industry that I've yet to find that allows you to live that kind of lifestyle. Now, here's what I will tell you though, okay? As an in-person sales rep, if you're anything like I was back when I was in car sales over 4 years ago now, it's long hours, 60 to 80 hours a week. You can't travel. You're stuck to one location. You got to be at the office every single day or knocking doors, right? And you definitely don't have time for a lot of quality time with your family and no personal life either. If you feel that way, that's exactly where I was at 4 years ago when I found remote high ticket sales. And I got into the industry, applied for a job, got an offer, got into it, had no idea what I was getting into. I just wanted something different. I was burnt out on in-person sales, and it changed my life. And I didn't get that. I didn't ever experience that 4-hour work week they talk about or anything of that nature. But I definitely made way more money than I could have ever made in in-person sales. And I was able to travel, run my own schedule, and things like that. So all I'm trying to tell you is high ticket sales hard? Yes. Is it for everybody? Absolutely not. But as an in-person sales rep, could it potentially be the best move you ever made in your entire life? Absolutely. Because you're already working hard. You already have a foundation of skills and sales. So it can be a simple transition, right? But there's a couple things you should know prior to making the jump. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So let's go ahead and dive in. So number one, the first thing you need to know and you need to assess about yourself if you're going to try to make this jump in high ticket sales is this. You need to know your risk profile. You see, there's different types of risk profiles for people out there. For example, a 9 to 5 employee doesn't have a very high risk profile. They're risk adverse. They're afraid that they hear the idea of working for commission only, like you do in in-person sales. And they're like, oh my God, you must be insane. For example, if you sell cars, when I went to go sell cars, people that work 9 to 5s used to tell me, dude, are you insane? You're going to go sell for commission only? Like, what are you thinking? And all I'm worried about is the upside. I'm like, people buy cars every day. This dealership sells 50 to 100 cars a month. Surely I could contribute to 10 of those and make my 5 to 10K a month. But risk adverse people that are lower on the risk profile, don't see it that way. They see it in terms of what happens if it doesn't work? What happens if you sell no cars? What happens if the market crashes, right? That would be a very low risk tolerance person, right? The next step, you've got your sales rep, meaning car salesman, door-to-door sales rep, in-home sales pros, and stuff like that. If you fall into that category, you are most likely getting paid straight commission, meaning you get no guarantee of any money going into every single month. You're paid purely on your production. And that's how I was when I sold cars. Okay. Now, getting back to the point, on the far end, the other end of the spectrum of the risk profiles would be being an entrepreneur, right? Think about it. If you want to start a business, you got to pull a loan for $50,000 to $100,000 or more in some cases, depending on what industry you're going into. But you better be prepared to spend a bunch of money on something that you're not even sure is going to work out. So those guys, entrepreneurs, would be on the furthest end of their risk profile, meaning they're the least risk adverse. Okay. Now, all of that is just to say that as going into high ticket sales, I like to think of it like this. It's a little bit more risky than your typical in-person sales job, and it's a little bit less risky than going and becoming an entrepreneur full blown, right? So it's kind of like that middle ground between the two. Now, the reason I'm explaining all this to you is because you need to understand, if you're going to try to get into high ticket sales, that you're going to have a little bit of risk. It's just like taking a bet on yourself if you were to start your own business or anything of that nature. Now, do you have to come up with massive amounts of upfront capital in order to get into it? No, that's a great part. It's just like any other sales job. You need no capital to get started. You can get on an offer right away and you can immediately start closing. But it takes more sales skills than your average in-person sales job. So there could be a little bit of a buffer period or a ramp up period where you're trying to learn the game. In addition to that, it's just a little bit more volatile, I've found, right? Because at the end of the day, you're typically selling coaching or consulting services. So what that means is it's heavily dependent on how good the marketing is for the coaching company you're working for. So there could be ebbs and flows, right? Now, what I've found is on average, your average high ticket closer makes much, much more than your average in-person sales rep. So over a year horizon, if you were to look at a 12-month period, most high ticket closers make way more than you could ever make in in-person sales, but there may be more ebbs and flows in their income, like 10K one month, 4K the next, 12K the next, 5K the next, etc. Whereas in in-person sales, it tends to be a little bit more stable. So the reason I'm explaining all this to you so you can understand this, if you're the type of person that can't sleep and you're going to be stressed out and this is going to be killing you if your income has a little bit of fluctuation month to month, then high ticket sales is probably not for you, because the transition is going to be tough. There's going to be a ramp up period most likely. And there is that ebbs. There are uncontrollable ebbs and flows you're going to have to deal with. Now, listen, if you're okay with that, you manage your money well, and you can stay level headed and understand that it's all just a numbers game and you're going to make a ton of money, then it's no big deal. So that's number one, is assessing your risk profile and really deciding if you have what it takes to step into high ticket sales and you can withstand that volatility. Okay. Now, number two is a commitment to mastery in sales. Okay. Because what most people don't understand is that selling a product and selling a coaching program are two completely different things. The way I like to say it is like this, right? If I sell roofs and you invite me into your home to inspect your roof and I say you need a new one and you tell me, no, I can't afford it or something like that, I can simply point to your roof and you can physically see it with your own eyeballs that your roof is damaged. Okay. There's no arguing that. However, when you're selling high ticket sales, you're selling a transformation that hasn't happened yet and only exists inside the customer's mind. So it takes a next level of sales ability. And what I mean by that is you got to be really good at asking questions, really good at probing on pain and figuring out exactly what the customer's problems are. You've got to be really good at future pacing them and helping them figure out what their future is going to look like once they solve this problem, right? On top of that, it's very concentrated. Like, for example, if you hop on a, meeting, if you're in high ticket sales, you're going to be taking virtual meetings, Google Meets, Zoom calls, etc. And you're going to be face to face with people for 45 minutes straight, leading the entire conversation. So there's less room for error, because what I found in most in-person sales industries, especially when I sold cars, is that if I'm in a 2 to 4 hour car sales engagement, trying to sell a car, only for about 10 to 15 minutes of that interaction, of that entire interaction, am I actually trying to close the deal and doing, negotiating and persuading. Whereas in high ticket sales, for a full 30 to 60 minutes over a Zoom call or a Google Meet, I'm actively trying to close that person, trying to control the frame of the conversation. So all of that to say, if you're going to step into high ticket sales, the second thing you need to know is that you better be ready to commit to learning sales at an entirely new level. Because however good you think you currently are at sales, you're probably not as good as you think. And once you step into high ticket sales, you'll probably figure that out really, really soon. All right, now let's move on to number 3. And this is one of the most important. The last indicator that you'd be good to step into high ticket sales is mental toughness. Okay. You see, what I found as someone who's made millions of dollars in remote high ticket closing and somebody who's helped dozens and dozens of people make the transition is that this takes a lot of toughness. You see, going from your in-person sales job and making a pivot to any new industry is definitely tough always, right? But if you're going to go from an in-person sales job to remote high ticket sales, it requires learning a whole new way to sell. In addition to that, you've got to land the job. You've got to land a really good role. And I always like to tell my students, be it as it is, like, you got to understand that you're not the only person out there in the market that wants to land a high paying, 6-figure plus remote sales job that allows you to have time freedom, location freedom, make way more money. Like, big surprise, right? There's tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of people out there that want to get into remote high ticket closing. So if you look at the best companies, the ones that could actually pay you, 6 figures or multiple 6 figures per year they're typically bigger companies that are more established, a lot more stable, and they're doing millions of dollars a month. So those companies, being that they have such great benefits, they have hundreds of applicants they weed through every single month. So in order for you to get a job, even if you're a great sales rep, sometimes you got to apply for multiple offers. Sometimes you'll get denied, even if you feel like you were the perfect fit for the job. So that's just something you're going to have to deal with, and you're going to have the mental toughness with when you step into a remote high ticket closing. In addition to that, once you get rolling and once you're in the ramp up phase, between the ebbs and flows and between the learning phase of trying to figure this stuff out, there's going to be a lot of failure. There's going to be a lot of, dealing with bad prospects. There's going to be a lot of getting told no. And if you can't handle that rejection, then high ticket sales is definitely not for you. And I always like to say this when it comes to mental toughness, because a lot of people are head shakers, meaning when I say you need mental toughness in order to do this at a very high level, sometimes they shake their head and they're like, well, I got it. I'm extremely mentally tough. But like Mike Tyson always said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So a lot of people are mentally tough until they get told no 1,000 times, they get denied for 5 jobs, and their confidence is shot, right? So you really got to audit yourself and ask yourself, do you have the mental toughness it takes? Because again, everybody wants the life of 10K plus, working from anywhere in the world, being your own boss, but nobody wants to put in the work to actually get there. And I don't even want to say that. It's just very few people, right? Now, if you fit the criteria of everything I just described, you in fact would be a great fit for high ticket sales. Okay. So let's recap one last time here. Number one, you've got to assess your risk profile. You've got to make sure that this is something that you can handle. It's not going to kill you, stress you out to the point where your life is miserable, that you can have a good perspective on these things and not panic when there's ebbs and flows, and you can deal with that. That's number one. Number two, you've got to be committed to mastering sales at a whole new level, because there's going to be a learning curve. You're going to have to step it up. You're going to have to study more. You're going to have to work with a trainer, do role plays, call reviews. All that stuff's going to be uncomfortable to learn that stuff. And then lastly, you've got to have a next level of mental toughness. You've got to be ready to apply for multiple offers. You've got to be ready to work harder than you ever have. You've got to be ready to learn something entirely new. So that's the 3 criteria. Now, if you're watching this video and you got to the end and you're like, this is me, like I can definitely do that, then here's what I'll tell you. That dream that everybody talks about of being able to work remote, make 6 figures, multiple 6 figures a year, and being able to travel and, basically have a lot of freedom, that dream is true. And that dream can come true as long as those 3 things you're ready for. Okay. So as we wrap up the video, I hope you got a ton of value. My goal is simple. I like helping in-person sales reps transition into remote high ticket closing. You see, about 4 years ago, when I transitioned from car sales into high ticket sales and changed my life forever, I wasn't looking for something easy. I was just looking for something that was more scalable income-wise, that allowed me to work a little bit less than 60 to 80 hours a week, and also allowed me to be able to travel and have a decent amount of control over my own schedule. And that's what I found with remote high ticket sales. So my mission is to help in-person sales reps get into remote high ticket closing. And with all my content, just like this, just like any other content you'll see from me, my goal is to give the no BS perspective on how this industry works. Now, if you've made it this far and you're like, hey, I vibe with this guy, seems like he knows what he's doing. Well, here's what I'll tell you. Below the video, there should be a link. I may be hosting a free training. You may be able to book a call with me and my team. So if you vibe, if you want to learn more about how I could help you make this transition, then click the link below. But other than that, I appreciate you watching the video. Subscribe for more. Talk soon.